evening. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting of January 12, 2026. For viewers watching at home, some members of the public may be participating via video conference or teleconference. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge to the flag of the United States, to the Republic, the nation, God, will the Secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Buss?
Present.
Commissioner Lanson is absent. Commissioner McMahon?
Here.
Vice Chair Kettlehut?
Here.
Chair Ferris?
Here. Tonight we have with us Deputy Community Development Director Fabiola Zelaya Melker. Are there any written comments, announcements, or continuances at this time?
Yes, we had a supplemental packet that has been distributed to the commission and posted containing information related to item number 7-8, the 401-403 Hillcrest Development Agreement.
I have an extra. Does somebody need one? Might have two extras. Okay. Oh, 3 extras.
Thank you. Pardon the pause. Now's the time for public comments. At this time, any person may address the commission regarding a city planning matter that is not on the evening's agenda. Should the commission wish to discuss an issue raised by a member of the public, the issue will be referred to staff for scheduling on a future agenda. Anyone who would like to speak under public comments must fill out a speaker card in chambers or click Request to Speak on the agenda to receive instructions before the public comments portion of the agenda is called. Speakers' remarks shall be addressed to the commission as a whole, not to any individual commissioner or staff member. Unless otherwise provided by the commission, speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The screen will show you the remaining time you have. Do we have any public comments?
No.
No. All right, let's go to the consent calendar. Next, we have the consent calendar for the minutes of November 17, 2026 Planning Commission meeting. Do we have any fellow commissioners have any comments or a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Excellent. Any comments? If not, can we prepare for a vote?
Commissioner Buss?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyler Kettlehut?
Yes.
Commissioner McMahon?
Yes.
Chair Ferris?
Abstain as I was not at the meeting of interest.
Okay, motion carries 3-1 with Chair Ferris abstaining.
Abstain. Excellent. All right, thank you. Now we'll open the hearing. Case 7A. Will the clerk please open the public hearing?
Hearing having been advertised as required by law is hereby open to consider Agenda Item 7A, to consider a finding that the proposed disposition of city-owned property to the Conejo Recreation and Park District of the following parcels, APNs 525-0-053-115, 525-0-053-175, 525-0-053-195, 525-0-060-085, 525-0-060-095, 525-0-060-115, 525-0-060-195, 520-060-125 and 525-060-1 through 5 is consistent with the Thousand Oaks 2045 General Plan pursuant to Government Code Section 65402, and to consider a recommendation to council for adoption of an ordinance approving development agreement DAGR-2025-70004, establishing the city's agreement not to change the existing zoning and general plan designations of the property without the owner's consent for 30 years from the date of execution, and find that the project's categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to sections 15061B3 common sense exception, 15312 surplus government property sales, and 15325 transfers of ownership of interest of land located at 401, 403 West Hillcrest Drive, assessors parcels numbers as previously stated. The applicant is the City of Thousand Oaks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Presenting on behalf of staff, Senior Planner Justine Kendall.
Good evening, Chair Ferris, Planning Commissioners, and members of the public. Tonight, we are here to present a request from the city related to the sale of land to the Conejo Recreation and Parks District. I am joined by city staff from the Community Development Department, City Attorney's Office, and City Manager's Office, who are available to answer any questions the Commission may have. As Lori just read, the request before you this evening is, I'll summarize, to find that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA, to find that the proposed disposition of the city-owned property within Specific Plan 17 to the Conejo Recreation and Park District, or CRPD, is consistent with the Thousand Oaks 2045 General Plan, and to recommend that the City Council adopt an ordinance approving the development agreement. Provided on your screen is a vicinity map of the area, the Specific Plan 17 area, and the subject properties, depicting the subject site generally with red asterisks. The map shown now on your screen provides a closer aerial view of the area with the subject properties depicted within the red lines. The subject properties are again zoned Specific Plan 17, with a portion of one of the properties noted with a purple star also zoned with the mixed use overlay zone. Those are existing zoning designations, to be clear. All properties subject to the potential sale and development agreement are more commonly referred to as 401 and 403 West Hillcrest Drive, are designated as being within that Specific Plan number 17, which was adopted in 1997. Approximately half of the SP 17 area has undergone site improvements, primarily within a 35-acre section of the site that includes development currently occupied by CRPD for its headquarters and the Hillcrest Center for the Arts. The other 27 of the acres of the site consist of a hill within the northerly and easterly portions of the Specific Plan area just shown, which is more commonly known as Fireworks Hill. The land use designations that you see on your screen here, again, just being clear, are the existing designations. During the negotiation for the sale of the subject properties, CRPD requested that the existing zoning regulations and land use designations just described be preserved in their current state. As such, Development Agreement 2025-70004 is proposed to create a binding contract that the city will maintain those existing general plan land use designations and zoning designations as currently adopted and just described for 30 years. Should any changes to the land use or zoning designations be proposed by the property owner or with the consent of the property owner, the city would consider the proposed project in accordance with the procedures required by state law and the Thousand Oaks Municipal Code. No physical development or change of use is proposed as part of the subject request. There is no physical changes, again, proposed as part of tonight's request. Government Code Section 65402 requires that any real property disposition be reviewed by the Planning Commission to confirm that the location, purpose, and extent of the property disposition is consistent with the general plan. Staff has compared this proposal to transfer property with the overarching general plan goals and policies, and in this case, more specifically, the governance, land use chapter, and the parks and open space chapters. On this slide are a list of abbreviated description of the General Plan 2045 goals and policies that demonstrate conformance with the proposed disposition and transfer of the subject properties. The full text of these goals and policies can be seen in tonight's staff report or in the Thousand Oaks General Plan 2045, accessible at the city website, toakst045.org. And so staff recommendation tonight is to, again, find that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA, to find that the proposed disposition of city-owned property to CRPD of the subject properties within specific Plan 17 is consistent with the general plan, and to recommend that the City Council adopt an ordinance approving the development agreement. Just want to note for the record as well that the resolution to be provided for signature will include the image shown here as the Exhibit A mentioned on page 1 of that document. That concludes our presentation. Staff is available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. First question I would have, is there any ex parte communications to disclose? No. Are there any questions or comments of staff from commissioners? Commissioner McMahon.
Yes, hi. I understand that this is actually a purchase from CRPD, and I was curious about the amount that they are paying for the land.
Thank you, Commissioner. The total amount of sales is $30.4 million.
Okay, and it's also my understanding that that is going to be put in a pot for the new downtown plans, is that correct?
That'll be set aside in reserve, earmarked for the downtown, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Any comments from other commissioners? Vice Chair Tyler Kettlehut.
I have a question. Can you explain to me exempt surplus land? As I was going through the packet, I didn't really understand. I know that it was designated as that, but I want to understand how that process took place. I know City Council approved it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Assistant City Attorney can handle that as well.
Sure. So under state law, before a city can dispose of property, it needs to offer up the property to other agencies and affordable housing providers, unless there are certain exceptions that apply. And for purposes of the discussion this evening, there's an exemption for agency-to-agency transfers. So because it's exempt as an agency-to-agency transfer, you don't need to go through the pretty extensive process of making the property available to other agencies and affordable housing providers.
Okay, so it's basically, it's a disposition thing.
Correct.
Basically.
It's a box that the city needs to check before it can dispose of property, yes.
Okay, and does that negate a CEQA challenge? I know it was listed as one of the 3 categories for basically saying that it was not considered a CEQA project, but does it automatically negate the exempt surplus, automatically negate the CEQA challenge?
So they're separate things, but you will note that one of the CEQA exemptions is for a transfer of surplus property.
Right.
So that's a little different than the Surplus Lands Act, but that is a basis for a CEQA exemption, a categorical exemption.
Okay, okay.
Any other questions? Yep, please go ahead.
So kind of in that same vein, in terms of dealing kind of with CEQA stuff, I want to know, what, if any, preservation alternatives or preservation measures, like a preservation easement, have been considered due to the building's landmark status?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Basically, I'm just trying to find out, was anything in the discussions that you guys had, were there any discussions about, because this has been landmarked by the city twice, I guess the buildings have been landmarked as well as some of the periphery of trees, I think. did any of that, were any of those measures considered? Have you considered any kind of, because of the landmark status? And I realize that there's no development that's being proposed. I get that. But in terms of down the road, I mean, is there anything that is being done to preserve, like a preservation easement or something like that with respect to the landmark status? Were any of those things part of your discussions?
No, because there's no development of any kind or changes to the regulatory framework for these properties of any kind proposed, that is not part of that has been discussed. Should anything related to changing either the regulatory framework or the uses allowed or physical development within this property area be proposed, any impacts to landmark status or anything else would be reviewed, as required at that time.
Oh, I was just going to add that if there was any discussion about altering a landmark, there's additional provisions in the municipal code that would require an additional certificate of appropriateness that would be approved by the city for any changes.
Any other questions? No? Okay, I did want to follow up a little bit on the aspect of the landmark status. So, and especially as it relates to what we have in front of us, which is general plan consistency finding. So we did talk about it. Can we confirm that the 401 Hillcrest building is in fact identified as a city landmark by the Cultural Heritage Board, is in our general plan as a city landmark? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in our conservation element, there's actually a goal and policy. Goal C11 is to protect historical and culturally significant resources which contribute to the community's sense of identity. Policy 11.7 talks about resource stakeholder engagement. Decisions pertaining to the disposition of archaeological, paleontological, historical, and cultural resources shall be made in concert with recognized public agencies, groups, or individuals having jurisdiction, expertise, or interest in these matters. And my question is that wouldn't it be, especially given that we are asking about disposition of historical resources, should not we make a finding that such disposition is in fact consistent with this policy of the general plan?
Yeah, so what's being asked of the Planning Commission tonight is twofold, right? One is to evaluate the proposed development agreement and make a recommendation to the City Council on that. The second item, which I think is what you're getting at, is that the Planning Commission is asked to make a finding that the project is consistent with the general plan. And what is in the proposed resolution are several policies and goals of the general plan to identify that, yes, this project is consistent with that. I agree with you that what you just mentioned is, does also make it consistent with the general plan. I don't believe that it would be that we're required to include another goal in there. I mean, I think the proposed resolution has enough in it to establish that the project is consistent.
And I understand that viewpoint. The one thing I would want to make sure of is what can we do at the commission level to ensure that there is an overt recognition that there is a city landmark on this property. Because when people go back to these sort of, resolutions and understandings of what was there, if it's not there, the people later on don't know that it's there. And I think it's just critical that we highlight that, especially given that it is designated in our general plan as a city landmark. My question would be, what can we do to highlight that as part of it, if not change the findings or resolutions to do that? So as we're going along and gaining more testimony, I would like to see what is possible. Okay. Any other questions of the commission, staff? Okay, great. Let's, now we will go to public comments. We actually do have two public speakers. Each speaker will get 5 minutes. And if you could, state your name and city of residence. First will be Marcia Boy, followed by William Maple. You could come down. Generally, we need to have you on the mic so that we're able to have it on the broadcast. Is it possible, do we have a wireless mic? Is there something that we could potentially accommodate? Right.
Hi,
Thank you.
I'm Marcy Boy. I live over in Oak Knoll, and I didn't know anything about this project until we received a letter a couple weeks ago. So I came here tonight because I was curious at what was going on. I'm very impressed with what I found out. I do have a couple of questions. One is, are my taxes involved? We're going from the recreation, which is ours, to the city, which is ours. How does that transfer $30 million? I just don't understand is it a bond that you give to each other, or what do you do?
Staff can probably answer that at some point after the comments.
No, nobody knows how to handle the money?
We'll answer your questions at the end.
I'm sorry?
We'll answer all your questions after your comments are concluded.
Oh, okay. And it's hard for me to tell what the pictures are up there. I'm assuming that they want to buy the open space and their own property. They're not interested in all the commercial stuff that's over there off Wilbur. Okay, because that was a confusion. Thank you. I'm very impressed. Bye.
Thank you. Next is William Maple.
William Maple, resident, Newbury Park. Good evening, planners and commissioners. Before you tonight does history matter? And you sure wouldn't think so if you look at our city's website. They've taken down all the list of our landmarks. You won't find that on there anymore. And you won't hear it in the appraisal discussion or much that's coming before you right now. You know, history doesn't seem to be part of it, and landmark is rarely mentioned in any of the documents. It won't specify what area is a landmark. You also, if you wanted to attend a public Cultural Heritage Board meeting, one hasn't happened in 20 years. We don't have public hearings, and that should have happened before tonight about this building. That's kind of a dereliction of duty. Why am I here? I have an amazing view of Fireworks Hill and the Civic Arts Plaza from my front yard, the old City Hall. I used to mow my lawn and look at this strange building, didn't know what it was. Went over there and found it abandoned. I mean, there were trees through the windows, ramps for skateboarding, burnt bonfires in the middle, beer and couches and everything. I made a professional video at the time and brought it in and presented it right here on this board. Probably 29 years ago. It took 2 years to fight to make it a landmark, and we're fighting City Hall to preserve the first built City Hall. Not a fun process by any means, but the city residents won, and they preserved it. And it's something important to be able to compare where we were and what we thought was important to where we are now and what we're funding and how we're funding it. So that building was $1 million. It was paid for right off, you know, as it was done. And CRPD paid half of that. So it's an amazing tale that a lot of people, and you don't see it, you know, explained on the building there. I developed museum exhibits within landmark buildings throughout the country for 40 plus years, working through National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, lots and lots of laws and regulations of what I can do, where and how in these buildings. So I have a sense of what you should be doing And I've also served on the Cultural Heritage Board for the county, where they really take their meetings serious. They know their stuff, you know, they love their community, and they fight to preserve what separates them from the strip of 101 that's generic. You know, what makes Conejo Valley unique. And they're proactive. Before something's in jeopardy and about to be torn down or in neglect, they act. They have meetings, and they proactively list what's important, and we go out and research it using the criteria of the CEQA to evaluate that. So what are landmarks? It's not just something old. 50 years old is kind of a benchmark, but also, did any significant events happen at that site? You know, was it a unique structure? Did any personality or person of the community do something there? This building met all of that criteria. It was a unanimous yes vote to make it a landmark. And there are many in the ad hoc committee that are adversarial. They want the money for that site. You know, they want to develop this place with that money. And so we're repeating history in a way. The landmark has namesake trees on it and other elements. There are 2 POW trees that were dedicated at the time. One died because the building was neglected. It was supposed to be, you know, taken care of while it was abandoned. And I would argue that that was abandoned for demolition by neglect. You know, that you get an estimate and you find out, wow, it's going to cost more to fix this building than to just outright level it and sell it. And thankfully, they didn't go that way. With all that said, I believe the selling of this landmark to our Park and Rec department is an amazing idea. It ticks off so many wonderful bits of criteria, serves the public. It's a unique foundational moment where everyone wins. But I argue with the price tag. You know, if the land was donated, and it was by the Jantz family for free, why would you charge for it? You know, that's if I gave my son, you know, a car I worked on for 50 years and he sold it. You know, it was a gift. You know, it's just crazy in that you're selling it to another community entity that's serving us. And they also donated half the funds to build it. So I really argue that the $30 million is way overpriced. And I would please consider having a cultural heritage board meeting for the public before any more decisions are made, and charging a lot less for that property. Thank you.
Mr. Maple, actually,
Yes.
if you could stay, I did have some additional questions for you. So first of all, I'm just going to say, you and I, we've talked over the years. I just want to thank you for your service in this, especially in this particular area of really preserving the history of the city and how you've been involved in it. So you were describing kind of the effort to preserve 401 Hillcrest as a city landmark, and the Cultural Heritage Board resolution described some of the specific elements that were important. I'm just going to read them off. Can you opine maybe a little bit about what them, after I read them off here? It just says that the designation of historical landmark status shall apply to the exterior walls, facades, and architectural style of the existing Civic Center buildings. Modification of the interior of the 2 buildings are appropriate as long as the modifications do not affect the architectural style of the Civic Center. And future modifications and additions to the exterior of the Civic Center buildings are appropriate as long as they're architecturally compatible, thereby preserving the design integrity of the original structures. Can you opine as to why those particular things were called out for this particular building?
I'm a preservation snob. You know, it's like rebuilding a car, you know, a historic car. You put the proper parts on it, you do that. I would have had a fit about the elevators. You know, there's a lot of ways to grandfather how that's done rather than break the horizontal line that was so critical to the design. The design had parking on the roof so that 70% of the open space could be viewed, could be left that way, because that's how, it was a metaphor for how they saw this community being developed. What you do inside wasn't all that unique, you know, and Lord, thank you that it was a concrete building. You couldn't destroy it more than what it was in the years and years that it was abandoned. One of the POW trees died, and unfortunately, that gentleman did die. One of them is preserved, and it's still standing today. I would like to see better plaques up there. The woman who was, I'm sorry, not knowing her name right offhand, who was instrumental in naming the city Thousand Oaks, her trees up there. You know, the events that happened, you know, what was it, the decisions made, all of the people who stood like tonight in that room, you know, shaping what our community would look like, where we'd go from here, took place in that council chambers. It should be preserved so you can compare and contrast. This is what we thought was important for this community, how we saw open space, how we saw development compared to the density and the money that's spent at this site. You know, you don't know that this is odd if you don't look at what we were. And that's what I'm hoping to preserve. And the open space around it, I would argue, is instrumental to why it was chosen. Now, 54 different architectural competition boards that filled the entire gym at the Thousand Oaks City Hall. You know, and Yale, Harvard Architect, you know, we're looking through all these and picked this unique design of the environmental movement of that time. This is the only one around here. Think of all of Ventura County or even Southern California. How many buildings can you name that are similar to that? Maybe the GTE building, I don't know what it is now, you know, Baxter, but, you know, they probably stole that design and made movies within that too. So preserving the outside, but I think just as important as our community finds all our open space critical, I think all the land around that, especially the view shed of looking at the community, because the windows were out here. When you were serving behind that board, you would look out at the community and anticipate, how would my vote impact what I'm seeing outside there? And that was part of the design element. Sorry, running off.
No, thank you. Is there any other questions? Vice Chair Tyler Kelly.
Just a quick question. So as I understand, as you've described it, landmark status isn't just for architecturally significant properties. It also relates to the cultural resources. Is that correct?
It does, but it depends on who your board is. Unfortunately, our city council is our cultural heritage board, and their training and expertise on civic, CEQA preservation standards is not top of the line.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? No, thank you. And we do have from the Park District, Jim Friedel. For questions only, is there any questions that you had? I was wondering if you'd be willing to come up. I did have a quick question. Just name and city of residence if you're okay with it.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jim Friedel. I'm the general manager of the Conejo Rec and Park District.
Awesome.
And actually, having heard some comments, I wouldn't mind making a few of my own after your questions or whatever.
Well, I think the main question is just, we've had a significant discussion about the building itself being a city landmark and such, and some of the additional restrictions that might be on it if there is ever a time in which the Park District would want to see or make any modification. Do you recognize that, and that's one of the things, I mean, are you aware of that? I guess that's.
Yeah, we're aware of the city having considered and made a designation about the historical status of the structure. We're aware of that.
Okay.
In fact, one of the things I was going to share is that
Yeah, please do.
part of our responsibility and job in the community is, Parks, Rec, and Open Space. That's our primary mission. But in that mission, we now are the stewards of the McCrae Ranch, which has the oldest structure in all of Thousand Oaks. Actually, Crowley House is the oldest structure in all of Thousand Oaks. That's ours too. That's 1910. McCrae Ranch has a 1925 building. And then the Stagecoach Inn, of course. Our Conejo Valley Historic Society is in our building there at the Stagecoach Inn. So that's part of our DNA, is protecting and preserving our history, our local heritage, and our historical assets. When it comes to 401, 403, I can tell you that the price tag will prohibit us from considering any kind of improvements or modifications for many, many, many years to come. So you don't have to be worried that we might have some designs on changing anything. Because it is a big lift for us, but we're prepared to make that, and we're happy to do that because of how important this whole property is to the future of the city from the Park and Rec perspective. And what I do want to share is, as we look at the areas of opportunity, as the city referred to them throughout the general plan process, we know there is going to be a lot more multifamily mixed-use housing in areas that it wasn't originally considered when the city thought of the city. You know, we separated land uses, and I think mixed use is actually the way to go. It's how a lot of communities are, but now that we are going there, we need to provide park land space in close geographic proximity to where people will live. So the 60 acres that make up the Hill are really important to us, and more importantly to all the residents existing there, but all of the literally thousands of units that could be built right next to there in a short half-a-mile walking distance to the property. So that was our thinking, not what might we do to change the buildings. In fact, you know, again, we don't have the money to change the buildings, but we want to stay there just how it is and how we've been there for the last 25 years with the license with the city. But looking just as we're thinking, and of course I have a board to respond to, and we're going to go ask the whole community what they think, but we have some ideas of just basically activating the old National Park Service 401 building with very comparable, similar community use, probably some reservable big community meeting rooms. We might move some of our rec units into that building that are too cramped in other locations, but we don't see any notable physical changes, and frankly don't have any. But I want to say one of the things, and the reason you're getting a DA in front of you is because we are going to have to borrow money. There's a cash and financing, and it's all spelled out in a staff report that we're doing for our board. So it's online now at our website. But I mentioned, because somebody had brought up the tax question, so we're two totally separate entities, City of Thousand Oaks and CRPD. Our income is primarily 6 cents of the property tax dollar you pay. So think about your home and how much you're paying in property taxes. We get about 6 cents of that property tax dollar. And we do the park system that we do. But one of the other things we get are developer fees when the developers build. So we get about $12,800 a unit for every unit that's built. So if you imagine 2,000 units happening between the Oaks and the Jantz Marketplace, you got $24 million right there. That helps pay for the loan that we have on the property and the improvements to the park space that we can imagine. If you haven't been to the top of Fireworks Hill, walk up there right now. If you're listening to my voice, go check out the top of Fireworks Hill if you've never done it. The view is just bonkers. It is spectacular. And in the current plans, the current specific Plan 17, the general plan, it has been envisioned for a park up there. So yeah, we probably aren't going to be driving cars up to the top of the hill, but there are improvements that can make it more people-friendly up top, and pathways to get there, that kind of thing. And that's our business, park and rec improvements. And so that is the change we do want to make on the hill, and that'll go through a permit process and that kind of thing, and a public input process. But we're really stoked. No taxes, your taxes aren't changing. We're not asking for a revenue measure or anything like that. So we have saved up over the years for certain capital acquisitions, and so that is part of the pot of the money, and the other will be, so it's about 15 of cash that we have saved up for this very thing, property acquisition and improvement, and the other will come, we'll get it immediately from some sort of, loan of some kind. But we hope that as projects do get approved nearby, the Oaks, Jantz, that kind of thing, that we'll be able to allocate some of those developer fees toward that and pay off that loan faster. I think I touched on everything I heard and wanted to talk about, but happy to answer any other questions as well. And because I might not get another chance, I really wanted to thank staff, Akbar and the team in the city manager's office, of course, and the planning staff, everybody that's been involved, city attorney's office. It's really great to work with partners like the City of Thousand Oaks. And if I had to say, the city is kind of really going for the future with the downtown master plan. They're working towards our future, right? And we're kind of respecting and preserving the past. I think that those two things are really important together. And I just think all of this at the end of the day will be looked at as a win-win-win, especially 20 years from now when the loans have been paid off and it's there. It'll be a stretch for the first few years here for us, but what the city is going to do here there's some park-like amenities going in that we wouldn't ever be able to afford or do that they're planning on doing, which we're really excited about. So to the extent some of our money is allocated to that kind of thing, great.
Yeah, thanks. I was going to say, you probably got more than 5 minutes. That's the sneaky way to get more of it. No.
Sorry, I just went for it.
It's actually, but it was perfect. Honestly, this is a great discussion, and glad to hear your points of view about what to do. I'm assuming then you're not the applicant or anything like that, but I'm assuming the terms under which all of this is happening through the DA and the resolution are probably in line with what the Park District is
Yeah,
okay?
yes, yeah, we've had a chance to literally negotiate it. The development agreement is actually a vehicle only to be used if things don't go according to plan.
Right.
Like, we're using it almost in the opposite way a developer would use it. Developer does, hey, I got this plan, I want to build something. Ours is, if everything goes wrong and we have to do a financial bailout and literally sell the farm, that's the farm we're selling.
I want to be really clear, I don't want, the discussion we've got here isn't to get in the way of anything that has been
Right.
done there, but we have recognized there is a city landmark. If the staff is able to come up with language just to heighten the recognition of it, it does not get in the way of that. Is that something?
I mean, I don't know that I'd want to add any additional limitations or restrictions, but we're aware of the ones that are there, and it has landmark status. I believe that's what it's called by the city's landmark status. And so we're very comfortable with it. But I don't have authority to, and it's not something we
Understood.
negotiated or anything. But we do understand there's a historical nature to it, and I've talked to Mr. Maple over the years. We get it. And I've stood in his front yard too, and it's a magnificent view of the hill.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Are there any questions, Mr. Friel? Commissioner Buss?
I'm not sure if Jim or staff, can someone speak to how the property was valued? Like how we came up with the,
Do you want to do it? I did an appraisal.
So yes, Mr. Friedel's correct. We both agencies independently conducted their own appraisals. Myself and our finance director, Jamie Boscarino, met with Mr. Mooney, Mr. Friedel back in October. We compared notes, and where we landed was essentially kind of the fair market value that was assigned by both appraisals.
Had a Venn diagram, and there was a place where we both met, so it ended up being pretty easy that way.
and do you have any idea if the property were to be put, you said fair market value, so you're saying that you're confident that that property would sell to a developer for $30 million?
Correct.
Okay.
Under the existing land use designations, correct.
I just, one way we've looked at it, just because as residents, I think you guys have a lot of interest, and as planning commissioners, you have a ton of interest in the economics of all of it as well. And one of the way we viewed it is we definitely were looking to add square footage for indoor community center space, and we've been researching it, and it's $1,000 a foot to build new construction, government level quality buildings. So we're getting 55,000 square feet here. I don't want to say we got a good deal, but I feel like we got a good deal, a fair deal.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Thanks so much. Appreciate it. And that is it for the public comments. We now go back to staff for follow-up comments.
I think Mr. Friedel really said everything that I was going to cover. I would just like to, reemphasize that any proposal for anything in the future would have to go through the proper procedures to get that certificate of appropriateness, if any changes were to be proposed to the facade or any of the other protected or designated elements of the site. And of course, be reviewed for conformance with CEQA and consistency with the general plan, which again, as you noted, calls out this area as a landmark. So just want to reemphasize that all of those protections that are in place today remain in place and are completely unchanged from whatever the procedure is now, would remain the same.
Any questions of staff? I just want to, is there any Any ideas from staff about somehow identifying even in the resolution to at least heighten the fact that there is a city landmark on here? I'm not going to press so much on it, but I do look at this policy, and when it says decisions pertaining to the disposition of historical resources shall be made in concert with these, and we're not recognizing that as a policy that we are agreeing to say this disposition is consistent with. Is there any way we can at least recognize in the resolution that we are providing to council? I'm just kind of surprised we're not willing to state it. Yes, Commissioner McMahon.
I think it's been made clear that all the parties know this, and it's in our general plan as a landmark piece of property. And I think that having it in the general plan as a landmark property is plenty, in my personal opinion.
Okay, thank you. Just as a counter, it's in the general plan. We have a policy with respect to disposition of historical resources. We are the body required to find general plan consistency, and we're just saying words and not putting it into our official actions. So that's the reason why I'm bringing it up as a point of comment. Any questions? Still from staff. Okay. Let me just double check. Do we have any? This is the city is the applicant. There's no rebuttal in this particular case, right? Okay. If not, any final questions of staff? Then we'll close the public hearing and entertain discussion and a motion. Commissioner McMahon.
Okay, let's see. I move that we find that the project is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15061B3, Common Sense Exception, Section 15312, Surplus Government Property Sales, and Section 15325, Transfers of Ownership of Interests of Land. Find that the proposed disposition of city-owned property to the Conejo Recreation and Park District of the following parcels: APNs 525-0-053-115, 525-0-053-175, 525-0-053-195, 525-0-060-085, 525-0-060-095, 525-0-060-115, 525-0-060-125, and 525-0-060-135 is consistent with the Thousand Oaks 2045 General Plan pursuant to Government Code Section number 65402. And number 3, recommend that the City Council adopt an ordinance approving developmental agreement DAGR-2025-7004, establishing the city's agreement not change the existing zoning and general plan designations of the property without owner's consent for 30 years from the date of execution.
Well done.
That was the longest one I've ever read.
I don't think you beat the secretary, though. I mean, I think that she does an amazing job. Any comments on the motion? Vice Chair Tyler Kettlehat.
I appreciate what Jim had said about the fact that preservation is in your DNA. And for me coming in, I did have some of those concerns, some of the landmark status concerns, for sure. I do like that CRPD has been talking to Mr. Maple, who is basically our city historian, de facto city historian, and kind of the keeper of the wisdom. And I appreciate that you guys see that, and that's something. And based on what staff has told us tonight and what the city attorney's office has indicated to us in terms of that you know, that landmark status is there. I was concerned, Mick, that we didn't have that really called out, but I do feel comfortable that it is called out enough in the general plan and that you guys understand that that's something that you care for. And we get it, that, you know, some of this is going to have to be sold, but you know, my biggest concern was that property itself, was the building itself. And so for that reason, I'll support the motion.
Thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Buss.
I just want to clarify, the intention is not to sell any of the property unless fiscally that's like the last resort, like sell the farm, like you said. So, because I know one of the concerns had been, because we do have to have so much development, is having the open spaces. So that's not on the table legitimately, right?
Hold on. If we entertain this, well, Mr. Friedel will have to open up the public hearing again.
Okay, well then.
Do you want to, do you want him to comment?
Based on Commissioner Kettle's comments.
I think I misspoke. I didn't
Yeah,
mean,
that's
I
just what I
didn't
wanna
mean
clarify.
sell, I
Okay.
mean develop. I meant
Yeah.
develop. So
Okay.
yeah, I misspoke.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to clarify.
Okay, all right. Okay. Mr. City Attorney, did you?
Yeah, about two things. I mean, you're correct. If we want to solicit additional input from the public, that we'd have to reopen the public hearing. I mean, what I will say is that the intent of the deal is for the Parks District to continue using the property as they've been doing, and for there not to be additional development. Is that the?
That's my understanding. I just want to clarify that because anyone watching, if it's thought that there may be development in the near future, then that kind of is different than what I understood it to be. So I understand what you stated no to be the case.
Thank you. I would still like to ask my fellow commissioners if they would be willing to entertain a slight amendment to the motion in the resolution, which would only add the following phrase, and recognizes that city landmark number 10, Hillcrest Center, is on the property. Doesn't change the findings, it doesn't change which elements of the general plan we're identifying it to be consistent with. It is merely a phrase which calls out that it is on the property, which our general plan states it does, should have no effect on this. And I would ask to amend specifically, I would move to amend the motion to include, let me just ask first, would you be willing to include it? If not, I would ask the commission to vote on it.
Before I do that, I want to have the opinion from our city attorney.
This is the. Where property is specifically defined here. Property. And it would be in this part here. Just add it. Yep, right in here. As the proposed sale preserves, blah, 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 and this project is consistent with exactly the same elements as been described by staff. Changes nothing of the other element.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think it's necessary to include that language in there, but I mean, I don't think that there's anything prohibiting you from adding that language in there.
you don't believe it would also change the effect of the resolution? That's what I'm trying to do, is not to affect it, just to call out something that is in the general plan, we're just stating it. You
So
know,
I guess what is the purpose of adding it then?
Because it would be in the resolution.
Okay. I don't, you can add the language in there. It's your resolution, you can add it. I wouldn't say that it doesn't do anything to the resolution unless you're adding the language, but again, I don't understand the purpose of it, but you can add it in there.
Okay, for me, the purpose is, there's nothing in the current resolution that states the fact that there is a city landmark on this property. This would at least recognize overtly that there is one.
Right.
So
But
that
there
people,
is
when they read the
there is a resolution from the city that identifies it as a landmark, so it's.
Right, but we
kinda
had to go and
superfluous.
find it. It's in 1997, it's in city records. This would highlight very clearly in the disposition agreement in the disposition decision the city council will make, that the planning commission recognizes that there is a city landmark on the property.
Sure, it'll be in the resolution regarding the finding of consistency with the general plan. Right? That's what
I'm sorry, say that again?
you want to add that language into the resolution as it applies to the finding of consistency with the general plan.
Right, but the phrase itself has no effect except to state that it recognizes that it's a city landmark. It doesn't change the elements through which staff has recommended that it's consistent with the general plan. You've highlighted the governance and land use elements.
I agree with that. I don't think it changes the fact that it's consistent with the general
Okay.
plan.
So that would be my request, is to have that changed so that it is stated, and when someone reads it, they know that we recognize that.
I'm feeling that this is a win-win. Park and Rec Department was on the same page with our city staff. They worked really hard together to draft this resolution. And who are we to add something to it that doesn't change it? I'm going to not change my motion, and if you guys want to vote on that, that's fine.
Okay. Then I would like to amend, Vice Chair Tyler Kedhot.
Okay, I'm not putting my lawyer hat on here, and I could be completely off base on this, because I did a little bit of research. This was a relatively complicated issue, I thought, today, because I did a lot of research. I think maybe by adding that language, we say that it's innocuous. Maybe it avoids a CEQA challenge. So when we're talking about future development down the road, maybe it avoids a CEQA challenge because, and I'm going to read this. I'm not going to ad-lib this. Because the proposed acquisition is a discretionary action that could result in irreversible impacts, CEQA requires that the city evaluate the building's historic resource status and consider feasible preservation alternatives prior to approval. So again, perhaps what we're doing is we're just kind of cutting it off at its knees down the road for a CEQA challenge because we have considered its historic status as we sit here today with language that's relatively innocuous. That was a tortured way of getting to that.
Yeah, I don't think that this resolution is going to have any impact on any kind of CEQA evaluation.
Okay.
It's going to have no impact on any challenge.
I would still support the language.
Thank you. Given that, I'm going to ask that I move to amend the motion such that Section 2 of the resolution, which starts with the paragraph "as the proposed sale," to have that read, "As the proposed sale preserves the existing land use designations of open space, commercial, and mixed use," here's the additional language, "and recognizes that city landmark number 10, Hillcrest Center, is on the property," that's the amended language, The project is consistent with the goals and policies described within the governance, land use, and parks and open space elements of the general plan. These include the following, and the following thing would be, so that additional phrasing is the only additional language.
Would you mind repeating that, please?
Sure. So motion would be to amend the resolution in the motion such that the second paragraph of section 2 reads, as the proposed sale preserves the existing land use designations of open space, commercial, and mixed use, and recognizes that city landmark number 10 Hillcrest Center is on the property, the project is consistent with the goals and policies described within the governance, land use, and parks and open space elements of the general plan. These include the following. That's the way it would read, and that's the only change. Is there any comments on the amended motion? Nope. If not, let's have a vote on the amendment.
So just point of clarification. So the vote is to add the amendment to the existing motion.
Correct. In the resolution, the PC resolution,
So whether to add that language into the existing motion that's on the table.
that's correct.
Commissioner Buss?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyler Kettlehut?
Yes.
Commissioner McMahon?
You've talked me into it, yes.
Chair Ferris?
Yes.
The amendment passes 4-0. Commissioner Latson absent.
Thank you. And I want to thank my fellow commissioners for entertaining the discussion. Let us now go and discuss the amended motion. Are there any last comments? I will just say, I think Mr. Maple ended up mentioning this right. This really is, you've mentioned it's a win-win. I do think it is something to where this is public land donated to the city for public use. It is continued as public use through this disposition. It will continue its public use. And it is an amazing element of our city, and one that has historic meaning to it, as well as continuing community involvement as you know, Fireworks Hill, and really something in the center of it. I'm very happy to support the motion, and I'm very, again, thankful for the opportunity to recognize these important historic elements that the city has. Where are we now? Is 60, how many years? 62 coming up on? And, you know, getting to a point where it's a century, like we've been around for a while, you know, and I think it's nice that we're able to do this and share it within our sisterly government agencies to be able to keep this preserved. So any final questions or comments? Commissioner Buss.
I agree with everything that's been said. Another thing that hasn't been touched on is that there's plays that go on at this center. You know, there's art shows, so maintaining that as a space for that as well, which I know CRPD will do and has been doing, is great for me because, and the community, because culturally, you know, to have where our children can put on these plays that are actually quite well done. I recommend going and seeing one. The writing's pretty funny for the age group. But yeah, so I'm very pleased that for the next 30 years at least, we hopefully will maintain this space. And I know that the park setting will be maintained as well as trails, because I know CRPD is big on that. So I'm very happy that the city and CRPD were able to come to this. So.
Final options? Let's go for a vote.
Commissioner Buss?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyler Kettlehut?
Yes.
Commissioner McMahon?
Yes.
Chair Ferris?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Commissioner Lenson absent.
All right, thank you. There's no appeal period on this since it's going to the city council. Thank you all. Let's now go to, we don't have any department reports this evening. Now's the time for commission comments and/or any AB 1234 reports. Are there any comments from fellow commissioners? No? Ms. Elia Melliker, are there any follow-up items, announcements, or upcoming issues?
Yes, tomorrow evening, City Council will consider 401, 403 Hillcrest disposition and transfer of city-owned property that you just considered right now. A letter of public convenience or necessity from Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control for the sale of alcohol for consumption off-site for Erewhon for a site at 2150 East Thousand Oaks Boulevard. On January 27th, City Council, we have 2 department reports from us. There will be a Community Development Department update and an initiation of a height overlay zone change and concurrent processing of entitlement to accommodate a contemplated rock climbing facility at 145 West Hillcrest Drive. And on the consent calendar, there will be the first amendment to CSG consultant contract for environmental services for the downtown project. Upcoming Planning Commission items, we have on January 26th, there will be 2 public hearings. One to allow for the operation of a religious assembly use within an existing industrial building and the alternating use of parking facilities located in the M1 Industrial Park Zone and SB 15 Rancho Conejo Industrial Park area. And one for an update to the accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units ordinance as the state keeps changing the regulations. And that's all I have.
Thank you, and thank you all. We'll now adjourn to the next meeting, January 26, 2026, at 6 p.m. Thank you.